Today on Purple Heart Stories, there will be a very unusual and captivating narrative. I invite you to listen and support with a like and subscription if you enjoy it. Alex Rayner was 35, and for the last 10 of those years, he had lived the life every man dreams of, doing what he loved and falling asleep in the arms of a beautiful wife. After leaving the Army, where he served as a combat engineer in an elite unit, Alex started a small but successful construction company. Emily was 28, and they met at the gym where she worked as a fitness instructor. Her childhood dream of a beautiful life seemed to have come true: a handsome husband, financial security, and the respect of those around her. But fate had a cruel trial in store for them, beginning with an ordinary high school reunion in distant Nevada. Emily was nervous the entire drive to the Grand Nevada Hotel. The taxi weaved through the evening streets, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this trip was a mistake. At the last moment, she even wanted to cancel, but Alex insisted. He thought it was important for his wife to maintain connections with her former classmates. He even gifted her a new black cocktail dress from her favorite designer for this trip. The spacious room on the 12th floor greeted her with the coolness of air conditioning and a view of the city lights at night. Emily took two dresses out of her suitcase, that black one and a dark blue evening gown she'd bought a year ago. Spreading them out on the wide bed, she spent an hour agonizing over which to choose before settling on her husband's gift. After all, she thought, this dress brings good luck. The next 2 hours were spent trying to achieve a flawless hairstyle. She redid her makeup 3 times, dissatisfied with either the eyeliner or the foundation. The mirror reflected a beautiful young woman, but Emily only saw flaws in her reflection: slightly asymmetrical eyebrows, faint wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, a hint of a double chin. When it was time to go downstairs, she felt like an imposter about to meet her judges. The Blue Moon restaurant was located in the historic center of the city, in a building from the early 20th century. Its interior combined the opulence of Art Deco with modern minimalism: many mirrors, dim lighting, and soft, deep blue sofas. The first thing Emily noticed was the jewelry of her former classmates: flashy necklaces, diamond-studded bracelets, and massive designer watches. She automatically touched her only piece of jewelry, a delicate gold chain with a pendant, given to her by Alex on their wedding anniversary. A life-saving glass of martini appeared in her hand almost immediately. It was followed by a second, then a glass of champagne. The alcohol dulled the sharp feeling of inadequacy that washed over her in waves when yet another former classmate exclaimed with forced enthusiasm, "Oh, so you work as a fitness trainer. How cute. I'm a managing partner at a law firm now." Or, "Wow, just married. I thought you'd have your own chain of beauty salons or a trendy boutique." It was at this moment, when she was ready to run to the ladies' room and burst into tears, that James Collins approached her. She didn't immediately recognize the elegant man in the impeccably tailored suit as the quiet, nerdy student who always sat in the back row with a math textbook. Time had definitely been kind to him. His features had sharpened, acquired a noble quality, and his eyes had a special sparkle that only people accustomed to getting everything they wanted from life possess. "Emily Rayner, you're as beautiful as ever," he said with a slight smile, kissing her hand. A shiver ran down her spine at his touch. "Shall we dance?" The next hour flew by in an instant. James turned out to be a wonderful dancer and an even better conversationalist. He recalled funny stories from high school, delicately avoiding topics of career and wealth. In his presence, Emily relaxed and even began to enjoy the evening. The champagne flowed freely, and James' compliments became more personal and candid. "You know," he whispered in her ear during another slow dance, "you're the only one here who's remained genuine. All these pompous peacocks with their accolades are just empty shells. But there's something special about you, a kind of mystery." It was well past midnight when James leaned towards her ear and said in a low voice, "You know, there's a very special place. Not for everyone. Only for those who appreciate the real life." Emily, intoxicated by the champagne and his closeness, didn't even ask where they were going. The silver Merced sped along the night highway, leaving the city lights behind. James spoke nonstop about how he started investing in startups after college, how his first million came to him by chance, thanks to intuition and luck. You see, some people have this gift to sense good fortune. You, for example. There's something about you, a special energy. The Golden Crown Casino rose before them suddenly, a magnificent Art Nouveau building at the foot of an ancient volcano. Its golden facade, illuminated by hundreds of lights, seemed like a mirage in the night desert. A place for the chosen few, James said with a smile, helping Emily out of the car. In the spacious lobby, they were greeted by an attentive manager who seemed to know James personally. He led them to the VIP area, where special slot machines with higher stakes were located. "Let's try this one," James led her to a machine with an image of an Egyptian pyramid. "I have a feeling." Emily had never played at a casino before, but at that moment she felt capable of anything. The first $50 turned into 300, then the count went into the thousands. Time stood still. There was only the melodic chime of winnings, James' admiring whispers, and glasses of champagne that seemed to appear in her hand as if by themselves. In just an hour, she won $6,800, a sum she could only dream of. James was ecstatic. "I told you you have a gift, but you know what? This is just the beginning. The real game is waiting there." He pointed to an elegant roulette room where well-groomed men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns studded with diamonds sat around the tables. "Come on, I'll show you what real luck is." The croupier at the roulette table, an imposing middle-aged man with a keen gaze, greeted them with a slight nod. Emily, unsteady from the champagne and the dizzying success, allowed James to seat her at the table. "Let's try something simple to start," he suggested. "Put 1,000 on 23. I have a good feeling." She placed the chips without even thinking. The ball bounced around the slots as if in slow motion and stopped precisely on 23. The room exploded with applause. 35 to 1, the croupier solemnly announced, pushing a substantial pile of chips towards her. Emily felt like a queen. At that moment, James leaned towards her. "Listen, I have a friend, a serious investor. He can lend us 100,000 for a really big game. With your luck, we'll break the bank." His eyes danced with the fire of gambling, and Emily nodded without hesitation. "Yes, let's." She didn't even read the papers she was signing properly. Her hand holding the pen trembled slightly with excitement. Everything happened so fast that Emily didn't even have time to realize the moment of collapse. James called out the number 17, and she, almost without looking, pushed all the chips onto the green field. The ball danced around the wheel for an eternity. Emily held her breath. At one point, it seemed to her that it was slowing down precisely on 17, but a final, treacherous bounce, and it stopped on 14. A deafening silence fell. "No, no, no, no." Emily grabbed her head, suddenly sobering up. She felt nauseous. James put his hand on her shoulder. "Relax, I have a solution. Come with me." She let him lead her away like a sleepwalker, unable to feel her own legs. They went up to the VIP area where the investor was waiting for them in a private room. Boris Golovkin turned out to be an imposing man in his mid-40s, in an impeccable Brioni suit. His dark eyes shone with sharp intelligence, and a slight accent betrayed his Slavic origins. He gallantly kissed Emily's hand, offered her cognac, and sat opposite her, scrutinizing her tear-stained face. "There's no need to worry so much, my dear." His voice was soft, almost fatherly. "Things happen in life. The question is how we solve our problems." He paused. "I have a business proposal for you. You owe me a round sum right here and now. That's $100,000. He smiled meaningfully. "If you have it, that's wonderful. And if you don't, keep in mind I'll take everything you have through the courts and send you to jail. I suppose you don't have anything close to that amount, right?" "Well, I'm very generous. I don't want to condemn such a beautiful woman to a public scandal, so I'm offering you a deferral, say, for an indefinite period. But it will have a small condition. You'll spend the night with me, and we'll repeat this every 2 weeks until the debt is paid off, or until I get tired of you." Emily felt the room swim before her eyes. She wanted to scream, to run away, but she seemed to have gone numb. James had disappeared from the room unnoticed. Boris sipped his cognac unhurriedly, waiting for an answer. "You have a husband, I understand," he asked as if in passing. "It would be unpleasant if he found out about your frivolity." At that moment, something broke in Emily's soul. She burst into tears, covering her face with her hands, smearing mascara on her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered through her tears. "Yes, I agree." Boris nodded in satisfaction and pressed a button on the table. A silent security guard entered. "Escort Mrs. Rayner to my apartments," Boris ordered, "and bring champagne." The next few hours were forever etched in Emily's memory as the worst nightmare of her life. She remembered the cold gleam of crystal glasses, the heavy scent of expensive cologne, the touch of strange hands. She remembered trying to detach herself, to imagine herself somewhere far away, but reality repeatedly burst into her consciousness with Boris' sharp commands. At dawn, she was taken back to the hotel. She spent almost an hour under a scalding hot shower, trying to wash away the events of the night. Her skin turned red from the vigorous scrubbing with a washcloth, but the feeling of dirt persisted. On the plane, she was constantly nauseous, from the hangover, from self-disgust, from fear of the future. The flight attendant solicitously brought water and wet wipes, assuming her condition was ordinary airsickness. Emily returned home late in the evening. The light was on in the hallway. Alex was waiting for her. He was sitting in his favorite chair, reviewing papers from work, and looked up when she entered. For a second, worry flashed in his eyes. He immediately noticed her paleness and red eyes. "Is everything okay?" he asked, putting down the documents. "How was the reunion?" Emily opened her mouth but couldn't make a sound. Her knees buckled and she slowly sank to the floor, racked with sobs. Alex was instantly by her side, putting his arm around her shoulders. "What happened? Emily, honey, what happened?" She couldn't stop. The words came out between sobs, confused and disjointed. About the high school reunion, about James, about the casino, about the winnings and losses, about Boris' office, about his conditions. Alex listened without interrupting. Only his jaw twitched, and the fingers gripping the armrest of the chair turned white with tension. When she stopped talking, a deathly silence hung in the house. The ticking of the clock on the wall could be heard, and a dog barking somewhere in the distance. Alex slowly rose. His movements were mechanical, like those of a robot. He went to the window and stared into the darkness for a long time. Emily sat on the floor, hugging her knees, and waited for the verdict. "So in 2 weeks you have to go back to him," Alex finally said. His voice sounded unusually hollow. "Or pay $100,000. Alex, I don't know what came over me. I was drunk, they kept pouring champagne. That James. He knew what he was doing, he planned everything." She broke off, catching her husband's gaze. There was no anger or disgust in his eyes, only endless weariness, and something else Emily had never seen before. A cold, calculating resolve. "Go to sleep," he said after a long pause. "You need to rest." Will you forgive me?" Alex didn't answer. He was looking somewhere through her, as if he no longer saw his wife but a goal, a point on the horizon. His fingers mechanically stroked his left wrist, an old habit left over from his time in the special forces. He always did this when making an important decision. "Go to sleep," he repeated. Emily got up on trembling legs and shuffled into the bedroom. Already in the doorway, she turned around. "I love you, Alex. Please don't leave me." He continued to stare out the window. Behind him, on the table, his army medals glimmered faintly under the glass. Somewhere among them was a medal for special achievements in mine clearing, a reminder of the time when Second Lieutenant Rayner was considered the best combat engineer in his unit. Emily couldn't know what her husband was thinking at that moment, about how to accurately calculate the depth of the explosive charge so that the impact was strong enough but not destructive, about how to calculate all the options so that the plan worked flawlessly, about how revenge is a dish best served cold. He stood by the window until dawn, methodically constructing a scheme of operations in his head. When the first rays of the sun painted the horizon, the plan was ready. Alex Rayner knew what he had to do, and he knew exactly how to do it. The Desert Rose Motel looked like a set from a cheap movie about life in rural America. The two-story building, once painted a cheerful pink, now resembled an old, worn postcard, faded in the sun. Peeling paint in places exposed the gray concrete, and the neon sign with the image of a rose flickered so erratically that it seemed to wink at passers-by, hinting at some secret known only to it. The reception desk was empty most of the time. The rare guests were more the exception than the rule. Alex chose room 217 on the second floor for a reason. It offered a perfect view of the parking lot, the main road, and most importantly, the winding highway leading to the Golden Crown Casino. On a clear day, you could even see the outlines of the casino building itself, shimmering in the distance like a mirage in the desert. The room was spartanly furnished. A sagging single bed, a rickety table, a worn armchair, and an ancient television that Alex didn't even try to turn on. But everything suited him. He wasn't there for comfort. The first thing he did was take out a brand new pair of Nikon Monarch 520x56 binoculars with 20 power magnification and an image stabilization system from his battered army rucksack. $1,500 well spent, he thought, recalling how meticulously he had chosen this model at the Hunter's Paradise hunting store on the outskirts of town. The salesman insisted on offering cheaper options, but Alex knew that saving money on tools was an unaffordable luxury in his line of work. Next to the binoculars, a notebook in an expensive leather cover lay on the dilapidated table. The dark brown leather exuded a pleasant smell, and the thick pages of high-quality paper begged to be written on. Just like in the old detective movies, Alex chuckled to himself, recalling the endless movie screenings with Emily when they were still happy. She loved noir detectives, where the private investigator methodically unraveled a complex case. Now he had become such a detective himself. Only his investigation was unlikely to end with a simple exposure of criminals. Alex went to the window, professionally assessing the observation post. The sun beat down on the opposite side for most of the day, so there was no need to worry about glare from the binoculars. The distance to the main road was about 200 meters, ideal for observing car license plates. A narrow ledge under the window allowed for the installation of a compact camera for night photography. He had specifically chosen a room facing north. The summer heat would be less troublesome during the day. He devoted the first 3 days exclusively to external observation, drawing up a detailed schedule of the casino's operations. The arrival of armored trucks was strictly on schedule, every Tuesday and Friday at 10:15 a.m., plus or minus 5 minutes. The security guards changed 4 times a day. Shift changes were quick and precise. Alex noted that the number of guards doubled during the evening shift, from 6 to 12 people. He paid special attention to the surveillance cameras. By the end of the 3rd day, an exact diagram appeared in his notebook. 16 cameras along the outer perimeter, 8 of them with night vision and thermal imaging capabilities. On the 4th day, Alex first crossed the threshold of the Golden Crown as a visitor. He carefully thought out his image: worn but clean Levi's jeans, an Eddie Bauer plaid shirt, worn shoes, a typical representative of the middle class who had decided to grab luck by the tail. No expensive accessories, just a simple Timex watch and a wedding ring. The security guard at the entrance glanced at him indifferently. Such clients were commonplace here. He spent the first 2 hours mapping out the game room. He did this slowly, moving from machine to machine, making small bets. The $50 allocated for the evening ran out quickly, but he wasn't worried. The money was just a cover. The information was much more important: the location of the tables, the routes of the waiters, and the blind spots of the surveillance cameras. He noted that the room maintained a constant temperature of 68 degrees Fahrenheit, cool enough to keep clients alert, but not so cool as to cause discomfort. The bar was located at a strategically important point. The entire main hall could be seen from here. Alex ordered a non-alcoholic beer and settled on a high bar stool, preparing for a long observation. The bartender, an elderly man with a neatly trimmed mustache, introduced himself as Frank. For a $20 bill, seemingly accidentally left on the counter, he willingly shared gossip about regular customers. James Collins appeared promptly at 9 o'clock in the evening. Alex felt his stomach clench with hatred. James looked impeccable in his gray Tom Ford suit, a true Wall Street businessman. A petite blonde in a red cocktail dress trotted alongside him, just like Emily a week ago, just as insecure, just as susceptible to compliments. Alex clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles turned white but forced himself to relax. No time for emotions, he reminded himself. He watched as the familiar scenario unfolded. First, the slot machines specially prepared, with an increased percentage of winnings. Then the champagne, the waiter seemed to materialize out of thin air every time the blonde's glass was empty. James whispered something in her ear. She laughed, getting more drunk not so much from the alcohol as from the atmosphere of luxury and imaginary success. After an hour of such treatment, they moved to the roulette table. The next day, Alex decided to expand the field of investigation. At the Riverside Hotel, located 2 blocks from the casino, he found a talkative porter. The latter, having received $300 bills, willingly shared information about strange incidents in recent months. It turned out that in 6 months, at least 4 women had stayed at the hotel after a night at the casino. They were all hysterical, all demanding to be connected to the police. And all to man, withdrew their statements within a week. "They say the Russian has a roof in the mayor's office," the porter whispered, nervously looking around. "And his own people in the police. A couple of years ago, a detective started digging under the casino. He was transferred to some hole in Idaho. And the tax inspectorate conducts unscheduled inspections just for show." Towards midnight, Alex noticed the appearance of a new figure. Tatyana Golovkina entered the hall like a queen at a ball. Her appearance did not go unnoticed. Several casino regulars immediately moved closer to the bar. She was good, there was no denying it. A dark blue Versace dress emphasized her perfect figure, and a diamond necklace shimmered softly in the dim light. But Alex noticed the main thing: her eyes. Cold, calculating, they constantly scanned the room in search of a potential victim. He carefully watched her work. Tatyana never spoke first, the victim had to take the initiative himself. This usually happened at the bar, where she casually sipped her constant Manhattan with double cherries. As soon as contact was established, the game began. Tatyana, accidentally, happened to be next to the client during his bets, and a surprising coincidence. In her presence, he began to win. The system of signs between her and the croupier was honed to perfection. Alex, thanks to his army experience working with hidden signals, quickly deciphered the main commands. Touching the lobe of the left ear meant that the next win should be big. Adjusting the bracelet on the right hand, the client is ready for a big game. Light tapping of fingers on the glass, it's time to drain another loser. The phone rang at 5 in the morning, when Alex had just returned from his nightly surveillance. Mike Peterson, his former colleague, and now a specialist in the geological department of the military ministry, never called just to chat. "Hey, old man," Mike's voice sounded tired, as if he hadn't slept all night. "Received your request regarding seismic activity. Strange topic for a man who builds houses. Got something planned." Alex rubbed the bridge of his nose. He hadn't slept for 36 hours but felt no fatigue. "Just checking the ground under a new project," he replied as casually as possible. "What do you say?" "I'll say you're damn lucky. A series of tremors is expected in 9 days. Nothing serious, a maximum of 3.2 on the Richter scale. This is common in this area, happening about once every 2 weeks. Locals don't even notice." After the conversation, Alex unfolded a topographic map of the area on the table. The Golden Crown Casino was built on the slope of an extinct volcano, a rather risky decision from the point of view of seismic safety. But that's what made his plan perfect. He spent several hours studying geological cross-sections of the soil, drawing diagrams, and making complex calculations. By noon, he was already on his way, exploring the area around the casino. The heat was unbearable. The thermometer showed 95 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade. Alex methodically walked around the slope, making notes in his notebook and photographing the terrain. His attention was drawn to an old technical tunnel, dug back in the 50s for geological research. The tunnel was half a mile from the casino and had long been abandoned, but its condition turned out to be ideal for the intended plan. At the local builder's Heaven hardware store, Alex spent nearly 4 hours carefully selecting equipment. He registered under the name John Smith, paid in cash, and bought everything in different departments to avoid attracting attention. An industrial drill with a diamond core, special fasteners for underground work, control and measuring instruments. All this was folded into his van under the guise of ordinary building materials. He paid special attention to the explosives. His experience as a combat engineer suggested that ordinary explosives would not work here. Something more subtle with a directional action was needed. Through old Army connections, he obtained an experimental compound developed for mining. This explosive gave a controlled impulse without a destructive wave, exactly what he needed. From midnight to 6 in the morning, Alex worked in the tunnel. The calculations had to be perfect. The slightest mistake could lead to disaster. He used a laser level for precise navigation, checking every meter of the tunnel being laid according to his drawings. During the day he slept, and in the evening he returned to observing the casino. It was impossible to lose vigilance. By the end of the 5th day, the underground passage was ready. Alex installed explosive devices at a depth of 40 meters, directly under the foundation of the casino. Each charge was placed with jewelry precision. The explosion was to create a directional wave that would coincide with a natural tremor. "I need a loan. A big loan." Alex sat in the office of James Hoffman, manager of the First Nevada Trust Bank, watching him study the documents. Outside the window, the merciless Nevada sun was blazing, but inside the room it was cool. The air conditioner was running at full power. A house in the suburbs of Portland, a successful construction business, an impeccable credit history. Hoffman tapped his pen on the table. "And your parents' house as additional collateral. Are you sure you want to risk everything?" Alex nodded. He had spent a sleepless night considering this step. Everything he had built in 10 years, the cozy house where he and Emily planned to raise children, a company started with 1 truck and a crew of 3, his parents' house where he spent his childhood. All this was now just chips in a big game. $186,000, the banker said after a long pause. "That's the maximum we can offer you with such collateral. The interest rate will be high." He spent the next 2 days creating a new image. At the Brioni boutique, they initially looked at him with suspicion. Worn jeans and a simple shirt were not convincing. But when he pulled out a stack of brand new $100 bills, the attitude changed instantly. 3 suits made to order cost $30,000. A Patek Philippe watch, another $45. Shoes from John Lobb, cufflinks from Cartier, silk shirts. Every detail of his new image was thought out to the smallest detail. At the casino, he now appeared after 10 in the evening, when the hall was full of wealthy patrons. His appearance did not go unnoticed. An impeccably dressed gentleman making large bets with casual elegance always attracts attention. He deliberately avoided roulette, preferring blackjack, a game that requires concentration and calculation. He won and lost with the same impassive expression, never raised his voice, and left generous tips. "New client, table number 4. He heard a waitress whisper something into the microphone hidden in her uniform collar. Alex knew the information had already been passed upstairs, and a response would follow shortly. He was right. Tatiana appeared in the hall 15 minutes later. She chose a red dress from Valentino for her entrance. The flowing silk emphasized every movement. The diamond necklace around her neck was probably worth more than the annual turnover of Alex's construction company. He watched her out of the corner of his eye, pretending to be completely absorbed in the game. Tatiana leisurely walked around the hall, seemingly lingering near the blackjack table by chance. "Do you mind?" Her voice was low with a slight huskiness. Without waiting for an answer, she sat down on the next chair. He noticed out of the corner of his eye that she was studying his hands. There was no ring on his ring finger. First plus in his favor. "You are here for the first time." Tatiana motioned for a waiter. "Please, allow me to offer you a special drink. We have wonderful 50-year-old single malt whiskey." "Thank you, but I prefer to keep a clear head during the game." Alex allowed himself a slight smile. "Although, I confess, such an offer from such a woman is very tempting." Interest flashed in Tatiana's eyes. Usually men did not refuse her offer. She crossed her legs, the dress seductively sliding over her thigh. "You must be a professional gambler. Such restraint." "No, what are you talking about?" He placed another bet. "Just a businessman who is tired of making money the usual way. You know, sometimes you want thrills." Tatiana leaned forward slightly, giving a better view of her cleavage. "Oh, I perfectly understand what you are talking about. Many people here are looking for just that thrills." Alex won the round and casually moved the chips to the croupier. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Tatiana giving a conditional signal, a light touch to her earring. The next deal brought him a big win. "Looks like I'm bringing you luck," Tatiana purred. "Maybe let me treat you to a drink after all. Let's celebrate your success." "Only if you join me." Alex got up from the table, collecting the chips. "And maybe tell me more about this amazing place." Tatiana smiled, taking his hand. She didn't know that she was walking straight into a set trap. She didn't know that every gesture, every look had been calculated in advance. She didn't know that the person she was going to deceive already held all the strings of the game in his hands. Alex's plan was entering its decisive phase. For the next 3 days, Alex played the role of a gullible simpleton with the precision of an experienced actor. Every gesture, every word was verified with mathematical precision. He allowed Tatiana to think she was in control of the situation, skillfully playing along with her manipulations. From time to time, he accidentally demonstrated his financial well-being, bank statements carelessly left on the table, photos of a mansion in Connecticut on the phone screen, business calls about multi-million-dollar deals. During the day he slept, recovering from the nightly vigils in the casino. In the evening he carefully prepared for the exit, a perfectly ironed suit, expensive perfume, a perfect hairstyle. His new image required constant attention to detail. He practiced his facial expressions in front of the mirror in the room. A slight smile with a hint of complacency, a slightly narrowed gaze of a successful person, relaxed but confident movements. Every evening he appeared in the casino exactly at 22:15, late enough to attract attention, but not so much as to seem concerned about time. Tatiana was always waiting for his appearance. She pretended to be engaged in small talk with other clients, but Alex noticed how her shoulders tensed at the sound of his footsteps, how her breathing quickened when he passed by. Her predatory interest in his person was almost tangible. Every evening she introduced him to new influential acquaintances, and each time Alex casually mentioned new details of his fictional empire. "I have a chain of construction companies on the East Coast," he once said during another conversation. "Nothing special, just 2,000 employees and an annual turnover of about 300 million. He deliberately understated the figures to seem more credible. Tatiana only smiled knowingly in response, but he noticed her eyes gleam at the mention of the sum. The evenings turned into an exquisite dance of deception, where each partner tried to lead while pretending to follow the other. Tatiana flirted more and more frankly, but within strictly dosed limits, so as to fuel interest but not to give cause for familiarity. Alex responded with the same measured restraint, at times letting notes of genuine admiration slip into his voice. Every evening he made bets slightly larger than the previous ones. Thanks to Tatiana's conditional signals to the croupier, his winnings grew exponentially. In the first 2 days, he increased his capital from $186 to $248,000. The casino allowed him to win, preparing for the grand finale. Alex saw the staff exchange knowing glances. For them, he was another goldfish swimming straight into the net. He was particularly amused by the reaction of the other players. They looked at him with envy and admiration, whispered behind his back about his incredible luck. Someone tried to imitate his bets but invariably lost. "You just need your lucky charm." Tatiana winked at such losers, and they nodded knowingly, unaware of the true meaning of her words. Boris watched the events unfold through the surveillance cameras from his office, occasionally appearing in the hall supposedly for small talk. Alex was always impeccably polite to him, but kept himself a little aloof, like a man used to dealing with more influential figures. This flattered Boris' ego. The Russian immigrant who built his empire loved to feel on equal footing with the American elite. Every night, returning to his room in the Desert Rose, Alex methodically checked the detonators through a secure communication channel. The system was set to his pulse. If something went wrong, the explosion would not occur. This insurance was necessary. He could not allow the revenge plan to turn into mass murder. Revenge was to be targeted, calibrated to the millimeter, like a surgical operation. Sometimes, lying sleepless in the pre-dawn hours, he thought about Emily. Memories of her no longer caused sharp pain, rather a dull longing and regret that everything went this way and not otherwise. But these thoughts only strengthened his resolve. He was avenging not so much the dishonored honor as the shattered dreams, the betrayal of trust, the broken life. And the closer the moment of retribution was, the calmer he became. When Tatiana once again invited him to the VIP hall of the casino, Alex knew that the denouement was near. The predator sensed prey and was preparing for the decisive throw. Well, it was time to show who the real hunter was here. The VIP hall of the casino was in semi-darkness. Tatiana personally led him to a separate table in a niche, hidden from prying eyes by heavy velvet curtains. A waiter materialized as if out of thin air, silently placing before them a bottle of Dom Perignon 1996. Alex noted how cleverly Tatiana created an intimate atmosphere, dim lighting, quiet jazz music, a barely perceptible aroma of her perfume. "You know," she said, leaning forward slightly, "I have never met such a player as you. There is something special about you." Her fingers lightly touched his wrist. "Maybe it's time for a really big game." Alex took a sip of champagne, looking at her intently over the rim of the glass. "Big? What do you mean?" "Well," Tatiana licked her lips, "today is your lucky day, I feel it. Why not do something extraordinary?" She leaned even closer, her breath tickling his ear. "Big risk, big reward. Isn't that how true winners live?" Alex slowly shook his head. "You know, Tatiana, I am a superstitious person. In business, in life, in the game, everywhere you need your lucky charm." He paused, watching her reaction carefully. "And my lucky charm requires special conditions." "What are they?" Her voice faltered slightly. For the first time all evening, a note of uncertainty slipped into it. "To work really well, the talisman must become personal." Alex looked her straight in the eyes. "Very personal." Tatiana recoiled as if struck. Several emotions flashed across her face at once: surprise, fear, anger. Finally, the usual self-control prevailed. "Do you understand what you are asking?" she asked coldly. "Of course, just as you understand what sums are at stake." Alex casually pulled a folded sheet of paper from his inside jacket pocket, a bank statement. Tatiana's eyes widened at the sight of the numbers. A heavy silence hung in the room. Tatiana struggled with herself. He saw it in the slight tremor of her fingers squeezing the glass. In 10 years of working at the casino, she had never crossed this line. Flirting, hints, touches, yes, but never closeness. It was her principle, her pride. And now, my husband, she began. Your husband will never know, Alex smiled. Besides, isn't that the point? Thrills, forbidden fruit. Isn't that what we talked about? Tatiana stood up, nervously straightening her dress. Give me 10 minutes. Room 742. She turned and quickly walked towards the exit from the hall, taking out her phone on the go. Alex knew now she would send a message to the security that she was going up to the room voluntarily. Standard security procedure. Going up to the room, Alex felt a strange calm. Everything was going according to plan. In the elevator, he glanced at his reflection in the mirror, a perfect suit, a confident posture, a cold gleam in his eyes. Sorry, Emily, he thought, but this has to be done. Room 742 turned out to be a luxurious apartment with a view of the night city. Tatiana was waiting for him, standing by the window with a glass of martini. Her silhouette was clearly visible against the background of the casino lights. She turned at the sound of the opening door, and Alex saw in her eyes a strange mixture of determination and doom. Champagne, she asked, pointing to a silver ice bucket. Not now, Alex slowly approached her. We have 2 hours until the big game, and I want every minute to be worth the money that will be put at stake today. The next 2 hours turned into an exquisite torture for Tatiana. Alex deliberately forced her to do things she had never done. Every time she tried to take the initiative into her own hands, he gently but insistently returned control to himself. It was his revenge, humiliating, calculating, cold. He wanted her to feel used, devastated, just like Emily felt. Tatiana played her role professionally. She did not show that she was unbearable. But Alex saw the truth in her eyes, self-hatred, mixed with greedy anticipation of future winnings. She thought she was playing her usual game, just went a little further than usual. She didn't know that she herself had become a figure in someone else's game. The casino gaming hall buzzed like a disturbed beehive. Rumors of the upcoming big game spread instantly. Regulars left their tables, drawn to the roulette wheel. Alex caught several envious glances cast at Tatiana. Her flushed face and slightly disheveled hair spoke volumes about what she had been doing for the past 2 hours. Boris watched the events unfold through the cameras from his office. His lips curled into a smug grin. Another big fish was ready to swallow the hook. He didn't even suspect that his wife had crossed the line with her victim for the first time in her life. For him, it was just another night at the casino, another sucker ready to part with his money. Let's start with a test bet, Tatiana purred, stroking Alex's shoulder. 10,000 on number 28. She looked meaningfully at the croupier, a stocky man with the impassive face of a professional gambler. He nodded almost imperceptibly. The ball hopped into the roulette wheel slots. Alex felt Tatiana's hand tighten on his shoulder. Despite the rigged result, she was worried every time, an actress to the core. The ball stopped precisely on 28. The hall erupted in applause. See, she whispered in his ear. I told you I brought luck, and now, she ran a finger down his neck. Let's play for real. Put everything on the lucky number 69. Her voice was full of innuendo about their recent intimacy. At that moment, the chandelier above the game room swayed almost imperceptibly. Someone from the crowd cried out nervously. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, the croupier hastened to reassure the public. This is normal for our area. A little seismic activity, nothing dangerous. I will make a bet, Alex said slowly, but not a very ordinary one. He laid chips on the table, $250,000. I bet that, as a result of the spin, the ball will not land on any number at all, not even on 0. A deathly silence fell in the hall. Tatiana froze with her mouth open. The croupier looked at her in confusion, waiting for instructions. Such a bet was not in the casino rules. It was absurd, impossible. But to refuse a client willing to bet such a sum. Tatiana quickly recovered from the confusion. She saw no threat in this bet. The ball should in any case stop at the 69th number. She signaled the croupier to accept the bet. "The odds are 260 to 1, the croupier announced in a trembling voice. A quick calculation in the heads of those present. If the client won, the casino would owe him $65 million. The whole hall held its breath. The croupier launched the ball with verified accuracy. Alex felt his right hand, lying in his jacket pocket, become damp with sweat. The tip of his index finger rested on the detonator button. Time stretched as in slow motion. The ball described circle after circle, gradually losing speed. Tatiana dug her nails into Alex's shoulder. Her self-confidence began to melt. Something in the client's behavior alerted her, but it was too late. When the ball almost stopped on the 69th number, Alex pressed the button. Deep underground, directional charges went off. In the same second, the building shook from an earthquake. The chandelier swayed more strongly, glasses clinked on the bar counter, and the ball, as if obeying some invisible force, jumped and, describing a graceful arc, landed exactly in Tatiana's cleavage. For a few seconds, absolute silence reigned in the hall. Then someone laughed hysterically. Tatiana, white as chalk, pulled the ball out of her cleavage with trembling hands. The croupier, with a completely white face, cleared his throat and said, the bet is played, the gentleman won." Tatiana disappeared from the hall faster than anyone had time to say anything. Alex knew she had run to her husband, hopping to warn him in time. But he was ready for it. While the casino staff frantically tried to contact the manager and panic grew in the hall, he calmly headed for the stairs leading to the upper floor. The security guards tried to block his path, but years of training in the special forces were not in vain. 2 precise blows, and the first guard slumped to the floor with a dislocated shoulder. The second reached for his pistol, but Alex preempted him, using a painful hold. The third didn't even have time to react. A blow to the solar plexus knocked him out. Boris was just finishing checking the safe, preparing to flee, when the door to his office flew off its hinges. He snatched a pistol from the desk drawer, but Alex was already there. A short, brutal scuffle ended with the casino owner on his knees, wheezing in pain. The iron grip of the former commando held his arm twisted at an unthinkable angle. Who are you?" Boris croaked. "Emily Rayner's husband," Alex replied calmly. "Remember her. You forced her to spend the night with you for a card debt. Now we're even. An hour ago I forced your wife to do the same." He increased the pressure on the arm, causing a new moan of pain. "And now you will give me my rightful winnings. Every cent." Boris Golovkin personally supervised the loading of the money into 2 black microbuses. His once confident movements became fussy. His manicured hands trembled as he counted the stacks of bills. He had aged 10 years in that night. The bald patches became more noticeable, the wrinkles cut deeper, and a hunted look appeared in his eyes. Tatiana disappeared through the service exit, grabbing her jewelry. The staff whispered that they saw her getting into a taxi with a suitcase from Louis Vuitton. Later it turned out that she had taken a first-class ticket for a flight to Paris. "I beg you," Boris's voice, once so authoritative, now broke into a whisper, "don't report it to the police. I will close the casino. I will do everything you say here." He was shaking, but not from fear of losing money. Alex saw something more in his eyes. The fear of losing his reputation, the horror of his wife's betrayal, with whom they had built this profitable business on deceit. "Children's Park," Alex said calmly, watching the loading. "With carousels, attractions, maybe even a small zoo. The place here is beautiful, a view of the mountains. The children will like it." He specially hired 2 armed drivers to transport the money, former colleagues whom he trusted like himself. They silently did their job, ignoring Boris's lamentations. While the last bags were loaded, Boris signed the documents for closing the casino. His hand with a golden Parker pen trembled, leaving uneven squiggles on the paper. "I myself wanted to end this business," he muttered. "Tatiana kept demanding more money, more luxury. I didn't even notice how things had gone too far." Alex silently watched his agony. Somewhere deep inside something similar to pity stirred, but he suppressed that feeling. He remembered Emily's tear-stained face, her trembling hands when she spoke about the humiliation that this man had subjected her to. No, pity was inappropriate here. The microbuses set off on their way at dawn. Alex was riding in the third escort car, looking in the rearview mirror at the casino building gradually dissolving in the morning haze. He felt a strange emptiness inside. Revenge had been accomplished, the plan had worked perfectly, but for some reason there was no expected satisfaction. At home, an empty office and a stack of unread business letters were waiting for him. Alex spent several hours just sitting in the dark in his leather chair. Fragments of memories swirled in his head. The first meeting with Emily at the gym, their wedding, plans for the future that were now not destined to come true. He took out an old photo album from the desk drawer. Moments of their former happy life were frozen on the glossy pages. Emily was sleeping upstairs. He heard her even breathing, climbing the stairs. He stood in the bedroom doorway for a long time, looking at her face in the moonlight. She seemed so young, so defenseless in her sleep. But something had irrevocably changed in his perception. Where there had once been tenderness and a desire to protect, there was now emptiness. "I avenged you," he said silently. "But why does it not make me feel better?" At that moment Emily stirred in her sleep, and something in her movement, in the curve of her neck, in the way she pursed her lips, caused him a sudden fit of nausea. All these gestures, once so dear, now seemed false, contrived, like Tatiana's grimaces that night in the hotel. The following week turned into an exquisite torture for both of them. Emily tried her best, cooked his favorite dishes, wore the dress in which they met, played their song during dinner. Every movement of hers screamed about a desperate desire to fix everything. But the more she tried, the more he distanced himself. When she touched him, Alex involuntarily shuddered. Not from disgust, just these touches no longer meant anything. They became empty gestures, mechanical attempts to resurrect what had died irrevocably. At night, he would sit in the garage for a long time, disassembling and assembling the engine of an old motorcycle. Habitual work helped not to think. On Friday evening, everything finally broke through. Emily placed a plate of lasagna in front of him, his favorite dish, which she had learned to cook especially for him. The aroma of basil and oregano filled the kitchen, reminding him of the happy days of their life together. "Alex," her voice trembled, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I love you. I'm ready to do anything, just say." "That's it," he replied quietly, pushing the untouched plate away. "You are ready to do anything, as you were ready that night at the casino. How you allowed them to manipulate you, how you succumbed to cheap tricks. It's not about physical infidelity, Emily. It's about the fact that you allowed yourself to be used." She sat down on a chair as if her legs refused to hold her. "I was drunk. I didn't understand." "No, you understood everything perfectly. Just decided that you could play their game. Decided that you were smart enough to outplay professional fraudsters. And when they cornered you, you chose the easiest path." Tears rolled down her cheeks, leaving black mascara trails. "What do I need to do, Alex? How do I prove?" "Nothing." He got up from the table. "You can't prove or fix anything, because it's not about what you did. It's about who you turned out to be." It was a difficult conversation, but necessary. They talked until late at night, for the first time since the incident they really talked, and didn't exchange cursory phrases. Emily told him how she really felt all those years next to him, small, insignificant, unworthy of his success. How the high school reunion stirred up all her childhood complexes. How desperately she wanted to prove to herself and others that she too could be successful, risky, special. Alex listened silently, looking out the window at the night city. Her words no longer touched his heart. It seemed to have been covered with a crust of ice. He understood her motives, saw the full depth of her repentance, but it changed nothing. Some things cannot be glued together, no matter how much you want to. In the morning, he methodically took care of the papers, closed the loan at the bank, 65 million of winnings more than covered all debts, contacted the realtor about selling their common house. The lawyer prepared documents for the division of property. Alex was generous, leaving Emily more than the law required. Each document, each signature brought him closer to a new life. Emily did not argue, did not try to challenge something or negotiate better conditions. She just sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, and watched as their life together was methodically put into folders and envelopes. Sometimes it seemed to him that she wanted to say something, but words no longer mattered. Everything had already been said and done. A realtor from Texas sent photos of the ranch early in the morning. 300 acres of land near Austin, rolling pastures, a small lake, a solid traditional ranch house with a wide veranda. Alex looked at the photos on the tablet while his mother packed her things in the kitchen. Father silently smoked in the backyard, looking at the mountains. He and his wife did not hesitate for a minute when his son offered to move with him. "There's a good stable there," Alex said, showing his parents the photos. "You can breed horses. Quarter horses sell well in this area." He spoke of horses, pastures, the possibility of opening a small farm, but everyone understood it was an escape. An escape from memories, from the city where every corner reminded him of betrayal, from a past life that had crumbled like a house of cards. The mother methodically packed family heirlooms, old photo albums, grandmother's service, father's army awards. She carefully wrapped each thing in paper, as if trying to preserve not only the objects, but also the memories associated with them. Sometimes she secretly wiped away tears. It was hard for her to leave the house where most of her life had passed. But the desire to support her son was stronger. "You know," she said when they were together sorting out the attic, "sometimes you need to lose everything to start again. When your father and I got married, we had nothing but love and faith in each other, and we built this life from scratch." She stroked her son's cheek. "You are strong, Alex. You can handle it." Trucks with furniture and things set off early in the morning. Alex lingered to finish the last formalities with the sale of the house. Emily came to say goodbye. He saw her standing by the mailbox, but did not come out. Some farewells are better left unsaid. The Texas ranch met them with a sky scorched white and the smell of wormwood. The house turned out to be more spacious than in the photos, 4 bedrooms, a large living room with a fireplace, a modern kitchen, but most importantly, a wide veranda overlooking the hills where you could sit in the evenings, watching the sunset. The first thing Alex did was take care of the stable. Work helped not to think, not to feel, just to exist here and now. He personally checked every board, every nail. The stable had to be perfect. A week later, he bought the first horses, a young quarter-horse mare and 2 foals. The animals required constant attention, and that was exactly what he needed now. The postman brought the divorce papers on Saturday morning. Alex was sitting on the veranda, sipping coffee and watching the sun slowly rise over the Texas hills. Horses grazed in the far pasture, their silhouettes clearly visible against the pink sky. He took out the papers from the envelope and a Parker pen, which Emily had once given him. The signature lay on the paper easily, without hesitation. He felt no bitterness, no regret, only a strange relief, as if he had finally closed a long-read book. The thirst for revenge no longer burned him from within, but the ability to forgive, it seems, also disappeared forever. "Alex, breakfast is ready." His mother's voice came from the kitchen. The smell of freshly baked pancakes filled the house. The father tinkered in the garage. He decided to turn it into a workshop where you could do carpentry. Life continued. A new chapter was just beginning. Alex took one last look at the signed documents, carefully put them into the envelope for sending, and got up from his chair. The ranch required attention. The horses were waiting for morning training, and the Texas sun promised another hot day. The past was left behind, and he was ready to move on. If you enjoyed this story, please support the author with a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your emotions in the comments. Thank you.